in one go. Of course, this is completely fictitious because we're in America and no one ever wears extra small or small, so we're going to get rid of those. Unfortunately, we didn't have triple XL, so we're just going to have to stick with double. And you get the point, right? Like, I'm ordering stuff for his store. I'm going to go to the shopping cart. I'm going to say, hey, Ron, is this the stuff you wanted? Do you have $8.9 million to give me?
I think we might have to split that order over a few shipments.
Okay, so let's say that we're not really going to order 10,000 of these things. I'm going to cut this back down to something kind of sane here. I'm going to cut this back down to 5 trumpets. That's still a decent horn section. And I don't know, does 32 grand still seem like a lot to you? Can you make that?
In the neighborhood, but like, you know that I'm struggling in my random sales business.
Yeah.
So maybe a discount? Can you give me a
Great,
discount?
yeah. You've been with us for a long time, so I'm gonna knock a bit off this really awesome horn section you're building here. Let's get 10% off that. So you get the point. We can do discounts, we can write notes on the order, we can do all the stuff that happens when you're selling from a brand to a store.
And so I just want to make a quick pointer that Glenn has been moving through that really fast. And for wholesale sales reps, they care a lot about moving through it really fast. Like the actual user experience and the speed with which you can generate an order and maximizing the amount of time you're talking about your products is very important to them.
Yeah. Unlike as consumers, when we buy a pair of shoes, we like to go into the store and deliberate, like, oh, do I want red or blue and blah, 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 blah. If you own a shoe store, you're buying hundreds of pairs of shoes really quickly. You don't give a shit. You just want to get through it, right? And that determines how much business you're going to do. So I'm going to set the ship date. Let's say this is going to arrive around Thanksgiving. I am going to flip over to, do you want to ship to your Allen Street location?
Let's go to the Broadway location.
Let's go to Broadway. And eventually the sales rep is going to get to the point of the order where they're going to say, cool, you're going to get this stuff. We're going to confirm the order. Ron is going to sign for the order right here on the iPad, kind of a weird signature. And then I'm going to send him an email confirmation of the stuff that he's bought. This is customizable, and I'm going to send that off. And for a sales rep, that's kind of it, right? Like that's what the sales rep wants to get done in the appointment, and you want to make it as fast as you possibly can.
So one of the annoying things that happens to store owners like me is that a lot of times my sales rep, who's generally lazy, will show up like only once every couple months, and maybe sometimes the stuff he sells me actually sells, and I'm in trouble because my shelf is empty of my hottest selling product. And so what I need a way to do is to find a way to place an order without talking to the sales rep. So I'm just going to go ahead, and what I will use is, let's go here. So Handshake offers a way for Glenn to give me a login so I can place orders myself. So I log in here, and this is a basic B2B e-commerce site. Here's my recent items. This is the stuff I ordered. Turns out those berry sacks were in fact big sellers at my random store. So I'm going to grab a couple of these. There's my order, and I can click checkout. I'll do a quick look here. Now let's ship them to the other store. And I click submit order, and that is that. So again, the goal here is to minimize the friction. I usually am coming in with a solid idea of what I'm looking for. There are browse capabilities, but that's not how most people do wholesale ordering.
Ron, why don't you take us through the back end that happens?
So then if I go back to, so Glenn's boss, actually his back end operation, is generally going to fulfill the order. So this is, Glenn's warehouse manager would log into Handshake and could see the orders here. These are the 2 orders we just wrote here at the top. And this is the point at which Handshake drops out of the process. Typically there's an integration within your ERP system or warehouse management system on the back end, and that order would flow through and get fulfilled and shipped out to my store.
Yep.
And so you might be wondering, like, okay, wholesale sounds kind of interesting. This stuff actually happens a lot. Where am I going here?
To Keynote.
To Keynote. It turns out that the wholesale industry is, in the US only, is a $4 trillion industry. And it's in 2014, estimates of B2B e-commerce run at 4x that of B2C e-commerce. So there's a lot of business being done here. And it's pretty underserved. A lot of reps visiting stores, most of the people we sell to, they're not using a different system. They are using an order form on a clipboard.
The most challenging thing that people kind of ask about this business and kind of like why now and like why is there nothing earlier, when you look at the B2C alternatives to what we do, when you think about B2C e-commerce and you think about Magento and Shopify and that breed of like that generation of software, there's like a rich history of like other solutions before Magento and Shopify in the e-commerce space, right? And then on the point of sale side, you know, everyone's hot on Square and Lightspeed now, but before that there was Micros and then there was all this other stuff. And you have to go back a really long way in history before you're going to find anyone doing direct-to-consumer e-commerce on like no technology at all. But we encounter those people doing B2B trade on no technology at all the time. And the difference is mobile. Basically, the difference is that until the iPad was invented, there was really no device that was well suited to serving a sales rep who's going out to visiting their customers and needs to present those products and get those orders written.
Right.
That's basically it. Questions, hit it.
Yes.
Feels like a CRM should be part of this somewhere. Should it integrate to a CRM? Are you offering a CRM? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so so kind of, right? The thing about B2B wholesale that makes it different to what a software company would use for CRM. So we use Salesforce. As much as I hate to admit it, we use Salesforce. That's because when we sell to people, there's like a deal cycle. Like they find us and we have to like talk to them for a little while, and there's a process there, and we have to like manage opportunities, right? B2B, like wholesale doesn't really need opportunities. It's very transactional. It's very like, I'm gonna walk into your store, you're gonna buy what you're gonna buy, then I'm gonna walk right out. I'm not gonna like create an opportunity in Salesforce and like move it through stages and all that stuff. It's very transactional. And so the reason I kind of caveated my answer there is that when people say CRM, often they think of like Salesforce and like heavy duty like opportunity workflow and all that stuff. So we do have light elements. Well, actually we're planning to build light elements of CRM into Handshake. Basic things like making notes on customers and things like that. But the full on thing that CRM means when you think of Salesforce is not really appropriate to this industry.
And we find that most of our customers do not have a CRM system because their businesses generally run, their sales efforts run on order flow, not on opportunities. And so it's just really not a fit.
Yep.
I have a two-part question, one for you and one for Ron.
Yep.
One for you is, if I wanted to set like early alert triggers, right, down to 15% or down to 8% inventory, how would I do that? And for Ron, I was impressed by your direct second order, but what happens if the baritone saxophone is no longer available because the manufacturer went bankrupt and I need like an alto sax? How would I do that?
The question was, sorry, I lost myself in the second question there. It's like,
If you're very successful and you're getting
8% of inventory.
right. So you're thinking about, are you talking about inventory at the
Just
retail
like
store side or on the supplier
actually
side?
both sides, because as the sales rep, I'd like to know if it's a big seller. I can use that when I speak to other clients.
Yep.
And then for my particular client, I'd like to be in early so that
Yep.
he doesn't get into, you know.
Yes, yeah, you can go on. Actually, you can answer both actually,
Both of those
Ron.
are actually great thoughts. And we are at the beginning of building out a system that will be capable of doing all of these smart things.
Can't be hired.
I'm sorry?
I cannot be hired.
Right. We have
Holding myself back.
We have capabilities to show, to bring in the other direction from the ERP system, what the actual stock level is in the warehouse, so we can show like how many quantities are available. And the longer term promise is to, by capturing the order flow in one system, you are able to do various analytics and do things like, maybe you want to discount when your stuff is selling slowly. Maybe you want to suggest items like this is out of stock, but here's a similar baritone sax you can order instead. So those sorts of things are stuff that we have not built yet, but that is the idea. It turns into really all the sorts of stuff that you do on a B2C e-commerce platform, like cross-selling and upselling and discounting. Wholesalers are doing without a lot of technology right now, and I think our platform holds the promise to bring that into the world.
You showed the simplicity of the transactional part of it, but how about the back-end migration of data when you have to load up all of those images and load in the pricing and things of that nature? How's that accomplished?
That's a great question. We started off like most technology, like most startups with very little. Like we have you can upload your stuff. and we have been slow, over the last couple of years building out technology. So we have a pre-built integration with QuickBooks because most of our smaller customers use a system like QuickBooks. We have an API. We have a CSV import-export capability, and over time we are actually actively working on that bit because it is a critical piece of getting to success. The integration is actually fairly straightforward because there's not a lot of tight interaction. There are customers come this way, and then the orders go that way, and there's direct handoff. So far it's going well, but that is a very big issue in our market.
One of the dynamics that makes that a little bit easier to manage, you don't need super real-time integrations, because one of the things that happens in wholesale is that most companies ship once a day, right? All the orders go out to the floor at the same time, they all get picked, packed, and shipped all at the same time. So integrations that operate on a kind of batched daily kind of basis tend to be at a sufficient resolution for the reality of that business.
So the other thing that happens is that sales reps run around to stores and have bad connectivity, and so all this stuff gets cached for offline use, and so real time isn't even possible. We have time for one more? One more question. Anyone? Yes?
Sorry if I missed this, but is payment processing part of the platform, or how do you do the integration between the wholesaler and the retailer in terms of that transaction payment?
So payment processing is mostly not part of the platform. It's only the very smallest retailers who actually pay at the point of sale. The vast majority of business is done, net 60, net 90, and so the payment processing happens in all sorts of different ways, and off our system. We are probably going to add credit card payment processing, particularly for the B2B e-commerce bit, because for smaller retailers for whom the distributor hasn't agreed on credit terms, but most of the business is done on credit.
And the important nuance there is that we explicitly do not handle financials, right? We are explicitly sales focused, and typically for these companies, the company that manages their financials and their invoice history is also the system that manages payment capture and stuff like that, and that is usually the ERP system and not a sales focused system like Handshake. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.